All right, so there are many different ways to generate ideas for writing a book. Um, you can draw on personal life experiences depending on what you're writing. You can kind of recall events or emotions, things that have happened in your life, and use that to resonate with readers, make it seem realistic. Write about your day job, what you know. For example, let's take Stephen King. A lot of times, the main character in a lot of his books is a writer, and that's because that's what he knows the best is being a writer, and so that is the main character in a lot of his stories. Um, you can read widely, and what I mean by that is, you want to read books that you like in your genre, but you also want to read other things as well, and you want to kind of embrace different writing styles, different genres. I try to mix it up. I love reading fantasy. I'll also throw some science fiction in there. I'll go back and read classics like The Portrait of Dorian Gray, 1984. That is because, the classics are classics for a reason. And so taking an option to read them and kind of, I guess, understand them better and why are they timeless, why are they considered classics, what themes are there, what things make these books so popular through the ages, what is it about the writing style, what is it about the message, what is it about the story, um, and reading widely and things outside of your range. A lot of times, even if I have something, um, let's say it's in a fantasy vein and it's a bestseller and there's all kinds of social media on it. There's TikToks. There's, people are just crazy about this book. Sometimes I will go out and I will purchase that book and attempt to read it just to understand, okay, well, what is it that people like about this book? There have been some recently that I have had a hard time actually reading. I know whenever the Twilight series came out, at first I was, skeptical but then wanted to pick it up and be like, okay, what is this all about? And I tried to read it and I just couldn't. It was way outside of my desire. I just wasn't interested in it at all. I did watch the movies though, and I was unimpressed by those as well. But, to each his own. Some people like that, others don't. Um, I did read The Hunger Games. I thought that the books were way better than the movie, which seems to be, a common thread when books are turned into a movie, and that was partially because a lot of her inner monologue did not translate into the movie. There's just no way to do that. So reading a wide variety of books can help you get a better understanding of different writing styles, what people like, things that are timeless. If you want to learn more about ideas and developing those ideas, you can try Neil Gaiman's Masterclass, which is wonderful. He talks a little bit about generating ideas and experimenting with different tropes and different themes and finding fresh angles for those. You can also watch Brandon Sanderson. He has YouTube lectures out there. They are a good source of also finding those fresh angles for those overused common tropes and themes and whatnot, and how to kind of reinvent different story arcs. Um, you can explore ideas through art and music. I have a painting that I purchased at Gen Con several years ago, and I just loved it so much. I actually didn't buy it at Gen Con. I actually came home and then I contacted the artist and said, hey, I want that piece. And I had it on my wall for a long time and just kept staring at it and staring at it and saying, there's a story behind this character. And that character is actually a character in one of my books. So a lot of times when I'm trying to channel that specific character, I reference that piece of art that I have on my wall as a source of inspiration and trying to, get inside of her mind before I sit down and write the story. The same can be said with music. Typically, I usually don't listen to music when I'm writing, but on occasion, if I'm having trouble staying focused, I find that classical or contemporary piano seems to help with that. I can't really listen to anything with any kind of lyrics. I get distracted by the lyrics, so it has to be something. And there's something about those, like the classical and the piano, that's just calming and soothing. So I do that. If I'm writing an action or an adventure scene where there's a lot of moving pieces and things going on, sometimes if I'm picturing that action scene in my head, I like to listen to the soundtrack from Pirates of the Caribbean. It's just fun, it's whimsical. Those are the type of fight scenes that I like to write. So, if I'm writing something adventurous, the character's doing something adventurous, that soundtrack seems to pull to me. You could do things, if you're writing in a fantasy realm, a lot of times soundtracks like Lord of the Rings or something like that can help to maybe bring it alive in your mind a little bit. It's kind of like the soundtrack to your mind, if you will. Creating a playlist can help with that on different, like I have different moods for different playlists depending on what I want to listen to. And that seems to help me as well. Asking what if questions is a great way to spark creative ideas. Asking, well, what if this happened? Or what if that happened? Or what if this didn't happen? Or, what if, anything can spark some creative ideas and make you question things. And foster that creativity in your mind. Writing prompts is another way you can kickstart your creativity. There's a lot of websites out there that have extensive lists for writing prompts. I am posting writing prompts every Monday in 2025. If one of them, speaks to you, sit down and write about it. There were a couple that were on the list of things that I actually created for the writing prompts that actually ended up being stories that I've written in the past. So things like that can absolutely trigger a little bit of creativeness and get at least the mind going and moving forward. Engaging in new experiences. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, trying new activities, trying things that are different, trying to provide fresh perspectives. So, traveling, engaging in a new social setting. Sometimes that's difficult for us writers. We tend to be very introverted. But it increases your sense of adventure. I like to watch people. Go to the mall, sit there, watch people, watch how they interact, watch how they talk to one another. Just watch those social interactions and see how that, engages your imagination and, how would your character react in a similar situation? Traveling, going to places. I took a trip to Ireland and I went to all of these medieval castles and, saw, art and music and new food and all of that kind of, was very whimsical and made me interested in Celtic culture and folklore. And then, reading and researching all of that brought new ideas to mind. Listening to others. So interacting with different people who think differently than you, people who have different experiences than you can provide a wealth of ideas, especially if you're thinking about doing a book that maybe you need to conduct interviews and you need to understand how that person felt because they stood there at that particular time. For example, I'm going to have a book where it's going to be set in Vietnam, and I am going to talk to, Vietnam vets and see how it felt to be over there. I've asked, my boyfriend was in the Marine Corps, and I had a and he served in a combat zone, and I had an opening line for a book, and I wanted it to be very true to this person who was waking up after an explosion. And so I tried to ask, which is really difficult, like when you wake up after something traumatic like happens to you, like what senses come alive first? Is it a smell? Is it your sense of feeling? Does your head hurt? Is it your eyes? You open them and, if it's bright out, like how do those senses come back online? And, what did you notice first? Did you notice if you were injured first, or did it take a minute for you to find, where your injury was located? Just kind of like, wanting to sit, and sometimes it's hard for somebody to remember, okay, well, I don't remember which senses, awakened first, but you can jog the memory and get descriptions of how they felt and whatnot. So it can be a tricky situation, especially if there's any kind of PTSD involved in that. So to, let people know that, hey, I'm going to ask questions. If you're not comfortable with them, feel free not answering. But just talking those things through and understanding and trying to get in the correct mindset so that whenever you write it, it's realistic. And so listening to others tell their story sometimes can help you write yours. Mind mapping and brainstorming is a great idea. Putting concepts together. I know sometimes I have authors that are, they're having a hard time finding an idea, so maybe exploring some of these things will help you find an idea and find some inspiration. But then on the other side, I've had people say, well, I have too many ideas. How do I pick one? And I've covered before that, I usually write each idea on a Post-it note and I put them on my bathroom mirror. And each day I take one away. And that's usually one that maybe I don't have a lot of details about, or I'm not particularly passionate about. And I'll say, okay, I'm save this one for later because it's an underdeveloped idea. And I do that until I have one left. There may be an instance where you can probably take maybe one or two of those ideas, or even three, and combine them into the same book to create, a very interesting plot, to have several of your ideas actually in one particular book. So, brainstorming, I like to use, like I said, I like to use Post-its. I'll write them on there. And just sitting down, talking with people, brainstorming. I talk to myself a lot. If you were in my house, you'd probably think I'm crazy, because I do sometimes have conversations with my characters out loud, or talk to myself and work through things. I do a lot of daydreaming, and I guess that can be your mind mapping and your brainstorming there. But there's lots of ways, and there's lots of different ways to have ideas. If you have any ideas, feel free to email me, bounce them off of me. You can find all of my information down below. Check out the blog. There's some links to some tools that you can use to try to generate your ideas. And just stay tuned, and we're going to walk through all of the different phases of writing. And it's more of an overview. The last time I did something similar, it was more of like my particular process. But there's no right or wrong way to do this. You just need to make sure that in some shape or form, you're hitting all of these milestones, and it helps you stay on track to get from the beginning to the end of your book. So happy writing. Get those ideas flowing.